There's this feeling, a kind of quiet question that starts to bubble up as we get into our later decades, especially after 60. And it's a feeling that usually has nothing to do with money or even our health, but it has everything to do with meaning. It's this deep internal pressure to sort of make sense of the whole journey. Today, we're going to explore this feeling together, not as some problem you need to solve, but as a really powerful and totally natural call to action.
The anxiety surrounding death is often less about the end of life itself and more about the fear that one's life will be forgotten or deemed insignificant. Just let that sink in for a second. That's not just some fancy philosophical quote, is it? For so many of us, it's a deeply personal truth that just seems to get louder over time. It's this fear of being erased, the worry that everything you've experienced, all the wisdom you've gathered, your very essence, might just fade away. This quiet, nagging concern is what we're going to call the legacy question, and it's one of the biggest emotional currents we navigate in our later years. So if you've ever felt this, I really want you to know you are absolutely not alone. This feeling isn't some sign that you failed or that your life is full of regret. Nope, it's a natural, universal part of being human. Think of it like your soul is asking for a final accounting, a validation that the whole trip mattered. This internal pressure isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's a signal from deep inside, asking you to focus on something incredibly important. And that brings us right to the heart of it all. What will I leave behind? For so many decades, our lives are all about building, right? Building a career, a family, a home. But then you hit a point where the focus just naturally starts to shift, from building to bestowing. This question, this pressure, it isn't a problem that needs fixing. It's a profound invitation. It's a chance to consciously shape how you'll be remembered and the kind of influence you'll have long after you're gone.
Now, what's really fascinating here is that this isn't just some vague feeling. It's actually a well-documented and pretty predictable part of our psychological development. To really get why this whole legacy question becomes so urgent later in life, we're going to look at the work of the famous psychologist Erik Erikson and his incredible map of the human lifespan. So, according to Erikson, the final chapter of our psychological growth has this fundamental conflict: ego integrity versus despair. He said this period is all about reflection, what he called a life review. It's something we all do. We instinctively look back over our lives, piecing together the story, trying to find a sense of wholeness, of acceptance. We start asking those big questions. Did my life mean something? Did I make a difference? Did it all add up? The goal here is to reach a state of ego integrity, which is really just a profound feeling of peace and satisfaction with the life you lived, the good and the bad. And this brings us to a real fork in the road, which this slide shows perfectly. The path toward that feeling of peace, of ego integrity, is paved with something Erikson called generativity. Now, that's just a term for our natural drive to create and guide the next generation, to contribute something that's going to outlast us. It's all about finding purpose, making a contribution, and sharing your meaning. But then there's the other path, the one that leads toward despair, and that's called stagnation. That's the feeling of being stuck, of having unfinished business. It's that deep sadness of omission, that awful feeling of dying with the story untold. So the big takeaway here is that this isn't something that just happens to you. You're at a choice point. You can actively choose to share your meaning or risk that regret of leaving it all unsaid. And this really gets to the heart of what's at stake. The greatest tragedy isn't passing away. It's the wisdom of a lifetime passing away with you. It's all the lessons you learned, the stories you hold, the values you fought for, just gone. So the urgent need right now is to answer this call, to consciously and actively embrace your generativity drive. This isn't just a hope, it's an action. It's the decision to become a deliberate ancestor. All right, so with all that in mind, we're about to hit on the single biggest, most powerful idea in this entire explainer. It's a realization that can bring a ton of relief and clarity. For years, society tells us that legacy is all about what we accumulate, our house, our money, our stuff. But when we really face this legacy question head on, we discover a much, much deeper truth.
And here it is. This is the big one. Your true, enduring legacy is not what you own. It is who you were. It's not something you put in a legal will, but in the wisdom you pass on. The moment we really get this, the anxiety just starts to melt away. Why? Because this is a kind of wealth that you have total control over. It can't be lost in a bad market. It can't be diminished by time. In fact, it's the only thing that becomes more valuable the older you get.
So what is this non-material wealth, really? Let's make it real. What's in your treasure chest? Well, it's the unique wisdom you've picked up on your specific life journey. It's the core values you've learned to live by, things like honesty, resilience, kindness, courage. It's those defining life lessons, the ones you learn the hard way, so maybe someone else doesn't have to. And, maybe most powerful of all, it's your personal stories, those little anecdotes that carry the real emotional weight of your values and lessons. That is your real fortune.
Now, understanding all this is one thing, right? But actually doing something about it is a whole different ballgame. The anxiety often kicks in because we just don't know how to start passing this wisdom along. And that's why we need a structured approach, a kind of reassuring guide to help us. Let's call it the Legacy Transfer Protocol. Think of it as a deliberate plan to make sure your influence endures.
This whole protocol is built on 3 really simple but powerful pillars. First, you have to define your wealth. That means getting super clear on the wisdom and values you want to pass on. Second, you formalize your generativity. That's all about moving from "I'll do it someday" to a real intentional plan. It's deciding when and how you're going to share. And third, you document your wisdom. You got to get it out of your head and into a form that can actually be shared and saved for years to come. So let's take a closer look at that first crucial step. Defining your wealth isn't nearly as scary as it sounds, I promise. It's really just taking an inventory, and we can break it down into 3 easy categories. First is your context. These are the unique experiences you've had, the history you lived through, the world you watch change. Second is your competence, the skills you've mastered both at work and at home, from closing a big deal to baking the perfect pie. And third, and this is the most important one, is your character, the values that have guided you, the principles you believe in most. Just taking a little time to list a few things in each of these categories is the foundation for this whole process.
And that's the real magic of having a framework like this. The whole legacy question can feel like this huge, shapeless cloud of anxiety hanging over you. But the Legacy Transfer Protocol, it takes that worry and turns it into a clear, manageable, step-by-step plan. It gives you back a sense of control and purpose, and it replaces that fear with focused action. It's like a roadmap that leads you out of the fog of what if and into the clarity of here's how.
Okay, so we get the psychology, and we have the framework. Now, let's bring this right down to earth. How do you actually get started? The key is to begin with small, simple steps that aren't intimidating at all, steps that build momentum and make you feel confident. We're moving from just understanding this stuff to taking gentle, practical action.
Here is a simple 4-part action plan that comes right out of the protocol. It all starts with creating what's called a values inventory, and then starting a story vault protocol. Honestly, these first 2 are the foundation for everything else. After that, you can think about who you're sharing this with, your generativity audience, and even practice starting those conversations. But for now, let's just focus on those 2 powerful starting points. This is your first and most important step, the values inventory. Look, before you can share your wisdom, you've got to know what it is. This is not about writing a giant memoir. It's a simple but really profound exercise. Just sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and answer one question. If I could only pass on 3 to 5 essential life lessons, what would they be? That's it. These are your guiding principles, the absolute core of your non-material wealth. Just write them down. That little document becomes your compass for everything else. And next up is the story vault. Because values and lessons can be a little abstract, right? Stories are what make them real. The Story Vault protocol is just a simple, manageable habit. Once a week, that's it. Commit to documenting just one story from your life that shows one of the values from your inventory in action. You can write it down, sure, or even easier, just open the voice memo app on your phone and talk for 5 minutes. The key here is just consistency. This simple habit starts moving your legacy out of your fragile memory and into a permanent archive.
As you start doing these simple things, something really remarkable starts to happen. Your focus begins to shift from a fear of ending to the joy of giving. This work isn't about looking backward with sadness. It's about looking forward with a real sense of purpose. It's all about making sure your final decades are defined not by anxiety, but by profound meaning and a deep sense of peace.
And this really is the ultimate payoff. Generationality is the cure for regret. Why? Well, think about it. So much of our deepest regret comes from omission. The stories we never got around to telling, the lessons we never shared, the love we didn't fully express. Generationality, the simple act of giving, sharing, and guiding is the direct antidote to that. It fills the exact same space that regret would otherwise try to occupy, and it replaces it with a feeling of contribution and connection. So let's bring this all back to where we started. Remember Erickson's final stage, ego integrity versus despair? Well, this proactive work, defining your values, documenting your stories, sharing your wisdom, this is the direct path to ego integrity. It's what allows you to look back on your life, not with a sense of dread or feeling like something's missing, but with a deep and lasting peace, knowing you've fulfilled your final, most important job to pass the torch. So, I want to leave you with a gentle but very clear challenge. Not for someday, but for this week. First, find a quiet moment and just draft your values inventory. Just 3 to 5 core life lessons. That's it. Second, open your phone and record your very first story for the Story Vault. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. These 2 small acts, they're the beginning of everything.
So, as we wrap this up, let's just think about what we've discovered. We started by admitting there's this quiet anxiety about legacy, and we've learned it's not something to be afraid of. It's actually a healthy, natural call to action, a nudge from within to find your lasting purpose. Then we found the most helpful insight, the power of having a simple plan, like the legacy transfer protocol. By taking those first gentle steps, defining your core values, and capturing your memories in a story vault, you start to secure your true, non-material wealth. And all of this leads to the most reassuring thought of all. By actively and deliberately passing on your wisdom, you're doing so much more than just telling stories. You are guaranteeing that your influence, your character, and your love will ripple forward, outliving your own lifespan. You're achieving true peace and integration, and you're closing your life story not with fear, but with a calm confidence and a profound sense of hope.